this idea, he said. What? Don't think I'm nuts. Okay. Stay, he said. I can't stay. Why not? You're miserable at home. You hate London. You don't have a job. You don't know what you want to do next. Stay here and start again. Where would I live? I asked. With me, he said. How would I pay rent? We'll figure it out, he said. You'll be able to find some work and you can write all the things you've ever wanted to write. I'll give you your own space and your own time. Think about how much freer you'll feel here. What about when your ironclad immigration system tries to send me home? Then I'll fucking marry you, he said. Is that what you want to hear? Because I'll do it. I'll take you down to City Hall first thing tomorrow morning and I'll marry the hell out of you. And then you can stay for as long as you want. I can't do that, I said. It's completely insane. Why won't you stay? He said, gently pressing his head against mine. You were the one who said you've got nothing waiting for you at home. I thought for a while. Because I'm the problem, I replied. Not the city, not any of the circumstances of the problem. I'm the thing that needs changing. There was quiet between us, and then we kissed for the last time. Call me when you land, he said. And don't get drunk on the flight, the plane's not going to crash. On the flight home, I daydreamed of Tottenham Court Road and ordering shit off Amazon. I thought of Farley's laugh, and the sound of my flatmates getting ready for work in the morning, and the smell of my mum's perfume in her hair when I hug her. I thought of the blissful mundanity of life, of what a privilege it was to live it. It was the day before my 26th birthday. Belle and AJ were at work when I got home, but there was a wonky homemade cake and a banner wishing me happy birthday. The next evening, we all went out dancing in Camden to celebrate, and I told them about my strange 2 weeks away. Lauren and I stayed up drinking and playing guitar until the early hours of the next morning, at which point a huge bunch of red roses arrived from Adam. After I came home, things got easier for a while. The heavy coat of sadness I'd been wearing for so long began to lift. I made a proper plan for what I wanted to do next. I fell back in love with my city, wildly. I read Bill Bryson books about England and ate toffee crisps. I remembered how lucky I was to live in a place I'd grown up in, a place filled with my friends. 2 months into my return, I left my job and went freelance. A month after that, I was given a column in the Sunday Times. Lauren and I made a short film about a directionless 25-year-old who has no idea who she is and reaches for everything other than into herself to fix the problem. AJ moved out. One of our other brilliant university friends, India, moved in. We left the dilapidated yellow palace of Camden and moved 2 miles north into a flat with no mice, a working loo and central heating. Octavia, my saviour, returned to London and became a close friend. Adam and I have always kept in touch, and we always will. He sees me when he comes to London, and I always have lunch with him when I'm in New York. He reminds me of a tumultuous time in my life, the stories of which I like to remember but never want to recreate. That time when I was 25 and so rootless and lost, I nearly moved country for a man I didn't know. He's got his half of the story, and I've got mine. We carry them round like those naff teenage necklaces of a heart split in two. Dear all. 12th of December. Dear all, happy Christmas from all of us. Just me. I live on my own now. Here at SE20's overpriced and undermaintained 32 Bracken Street. What a year it's been. It all kicked off with a flying start when I was given a promotion at the organic juice startup, Pressed for Lime, I've been working at for the last 4 years as social media manager. I was upgraded to the rather authoritative and yet nebulous role of social media campaigns overseer, which basically means I send out 4 videos on Instagram stories every day of pieces of fruit with faces drawn on them, wearing miniature knitted hats, on top of all my other responsibilities, for no extra money. Dad, if you're reading this, no, I'm not going to explain what my job is for the 100th time. And yes, I know my education cost a lot of money. I know I could have done anything. Just pretend I really am a lawyer to your friends at the golf club. It's not like they're going to Google me to check. And even if they do, they won't find my name on anything other than an old Bebo page because no one has even heard of the company I work for. Ha ha! As I mentioned at the top of this email, I moved out of my cosy flat share in Kentish Town with my best friend Katya earlier this year because she and her boyfriend said they were ready for some privacy. And they could cover the mortgage without me now. They both have real jobs. So I set up home all by myself in London's trendy Penge. The area is leafy-ish, maybe more branchy actually, and is very up-and-coming Metro 2016, which is probably why it's costing me £1,200 to rent a large studio with a mezzanine bedroom above the cooker. Lucky I'm such a foodie. What a treat it is to go to sleep with my whole bedroom smelling of baked salmon. After a long and happy 7 years together, Jordan and I broke up amicably this year. We were both a bit jealous of our friends having tons of casual sex with strangers from Tinder, and our shared death anxiety and choking FOMO meant we were increasingly aware that, when the end comes, we didn't want to have a total of 3 sexual partners between us. We read a few books on polyamory and gave that a good go, but what with our respective work schedules, we couldn't synchronise our diaries to make time for each other as well as all the others, so we thought it would be less time-consuming if we just parted ways. He took the cat. So now I'm being shown the delights of online dating. The men won't commit, all the sex is pornographic, and my phone never has any storage because of all the photos of fully shaven penises I'm sent on WhatsApp. I'm Penge's very own Carrie Bradshaw. Please read my sexploits on www.theadventuresofandrea.org. Amusing, desperate. Huffington Post. Health-wise, my hypochondria continues to thrive in direct correlation with my anxiety. In the past year alone, I've self-diagnosed 5 types of cancer, 3 sexually transmitted diseases, and 4 mental health conditions. I've also stopped walking in grassy or woodland areas since reading about Lyme disease. I still think I have it. Do you? My Uber rating has fallen to 3.5, which is disappointing, but I'm hoping to face this challenge head-on in the new year with renewed optimism and alacrity. Over on social media, it's been one hell of a ride. I managed to hit 2,000 followers on Twitter in November, hitting my projected target. You might remember this was my main goal in last year's round-robin letter. And, even more excitingly, I've had 4 Instagram photos receive less than 7 likes, and I've managed not to immediately book an emergency discussion with my online therapist as a result. So, progress all round. My goals for this year include getting off antidepressants, getting out of overdraft, and finding the perfect shade of cream blusher to suit my skin tone. Wish me luck on the next chapter of this ever-changing, unpredictable journey we call life. That's all for this year. Wishing you a very Merry Christmas and a new year full of happiness. Andrea. Kiss, kiss, kiss. Weekly shopping list. Loo roll. New knickers. Paper. Desire to read all sections of the paper. Coffee capsules. Marmite. Apples. Sanitary products that aren't scented with a Britney Spears perfume. Time management skills. Puppy. Dachshund miniature. Tap dispensing strong but milky Yorkshire tea. A better toaster with a more reliable timer. Flatmates who will watch Countryfile with me. My own driver, just for me. Bin liners. Puppy. Norfolk Terrier, soft-coated. Jarvis Cocker. An endless supply of cheddar. The time to watch every Seinfeld episode 3 times. My own cinema. Better grammar. Thicker skin. Better ability to say no to things. 20 pairs of tights with no ladders. Milk. Florence. When I first met Florence, she was 6 years old and I was barely a teenager. Farley opened the front door to see her little sister standing on the step swaying side to side, her hair cut into a tufty mop on her little head. "Florence!" she yelped. "What have you done to your hair?" Florence smiled cheekily. "Dad, I cannot believe you've let her do this," Farley shouted in her teenage bellow to her dad Richard standing by the car. "She looks like a little boy." Florence carried on grinning. She begged to have it that way, Angel, Richard said, shrugging. What could I do? I adored her instantly. Florence and I grew closer when she approached adolescence. Like me, she always felt like she was ready to be a grown-up. She wanted her own identity and independence. She was weary of her peers. She escaped into books and films and music. She was an obsessive, always tracking down every word ever written by her new favourite writers, watching every film ever made by her favourite directors back to back. Like me, she found being a teenager at an all-girls school tough, and I always wanted to reassure her that the best was yet to come, that being an adult, no matter how difficult or boring at times, was the best thing in the world. You know when people say school days are the best days of your life? I said to her one weekend afternoon as we lay in the sunshine of their family's garden. Yeah, she said. They're talking shit. Really? She asked, stroking my arm, always a condition of her being able to hang out with Farley and me when we were in our late teens. Yes, it's the biggest load of rubbish I ever heard. School days are the worst days of your life, Floss. All the good stuff only begins when you leave. Thanks, Aldermarston, she said. It was their family nickname for me. Anyone who walked through the doors of their home got a nickname. But Florence had nothing to worry about, because she grew into a completely sensational teenager, far better than I'd ever been. Like most teenagers, I was mainly concerned with myself, but Florence's worldview was wide-reaching and empathetic, especially for someone so young and who'd lived a fairly sheltered life. Floss was creative and angry and curious and passionate. She wrote a blog on film dissecting American indie cinema and bemoaning modern Hollywood. She wrote daily diaries. She wrote half a novel. She wrote and directed plays that she put on at school. She gave a talk in her buttoned-up school assembly on LGBT issues. She went on marches. She once came round to our house in Camden with a camera and 2 friends and asked if she could use it as a location to shoot a short film to raise awareness about domestic violence. She also became delightfully, wonderfully disruptive at the dinner table. A meal with Farley's family was nearly always punctuated by Florence shouting, "Misogynist!" at someone during a heated discussion. During one particularly memorable dinner, she went hell for leather on Scott when he dared to question the artistry of Wes Anderson's films and said he found his work to be a purely aesthetic experience. Floss went into a long, passionate piece of oratory, informing him why he was wrong, before leaving the table in a rage and returning with a huge hardback book about cinema and slamming it on the table with a thud. Florence was diagnosed with leukemia in the summer she left school. She'd finally got to the finish line of adolescence and stood on the cusp of life, only to be told she had cancer. But from everything the doctors said, though the treatment and recovery from the treatment would be very serious, the outlook was positive. And so was she, magnificently so. She went straight to Kingston Hospital for chemotherapy and made best friends with the nurses and cleaners. She would raise her bed as high as she could so she could chat to them and give them advice. She was told she wouldn't be able to have children, a fact that many around her found devastating, but she responded with characteristic grace and good humour, stating that the world was overpopulated anyway. She started a funny, honest blog documenting her journey with cancer that garnered thousands of readers. She took selfies of her newly shaved head and made funny videos of herself dancing around her bed. She was inundated with emails and letters from supporters. I couldn't have been prouder of her, and regularly sent her texts telling her that she had no right to be such a good writer at the age of 19. One particular post read, "The worst thing I heard that night, on the date of her diagnosis, 8th of August, wasn't actually the diagnosis, but the following words. 'We want you to stay in overnight.' I didn't expect that at all. And then the doctor said, 'And in the morning the haematologist will perform a bone marrow extraction on you.' That's when I knew something was not right. They don't just do those kind of things." The haematologist came in to see me to say hello and introduce himself before he went home for the night. I just wanted an answer, really, so I asked him plainly, "What do you think this is?" gesturing to my lumpy and swollen neck. He breathed a sigh before plainly replying, 50-50, it's cancer. When you hear the word cancer, you hear death. You think of all the prospects of your future shrivelling into non-existence. And you cry. And cry I did. This lovely man, evidently not so great with others' emotions, patted my back and attempted to comfort me with words of, "I didn't come in here to make you cry. Well, what do you expect someone to do when you tell them they've probably got cancer? Leap in the air and yell, 'Yippee, my life just got so much better'? No, of course they're going to be upset." And I was angry, and I was worried about my parents who were crying just as much as I was. And I remember saying, "I'm not ready to die yet. I haven't even lived yet." And then later on, "And I haven't had sex yet. It's not fair." But I got over that stage, and now it's more like, when I'm done with this cancer, I'm going to kick the world in the arse and be the best thing anyone's ever seen. I mean, who can reject me? I'll have beaten cancer. Everything else is easy. I texted her to tell her how much I loved it, and assured her that she'd definitely have sex once all of this was over. "We'll go on the pull," she replied. "I'm going to find you one cracking fella, I promise." She celebrated her 19th birthday in hospital. The nurses made her a banner that they hung outside her room. She found out she got into York University to read film studies, and they said she could delay her place for a year until she'd made a full recovery. She came home after her last cycle of chemo and made chocolate Guinness cake for the nurses who'd cared for her. Farley shrunk her world during this time. She was either at the primary school where she was now a teacher, at the hospital, or with her family. Scott was with her for everything, and I loved him for being such a steadfast, sturdy pillar of support for her and her family. We texted and called each other regularly, and he'd let me know how she was doing. It brought us closer, and I felt lucky that my best friend had someone so strong and loving at her side. Floss carried on blogging when she came home from Kingston. Her brother Freddie was a bone marrow match, which was fantastic news, as it enabled him to be a donor for her, though she had to recover from chemotherapy before having the operation at a hospital in central London. But, quite suddenly, her health started deteriorating, and she was rushed into the hospital prematurely. A series of issues followed in succession, one never being solved before the next problem came. Her kidneys weren't working. She couldn't speak. Her organs started failing and she was put in intensive care and on a ventilator to breathe. Farley was given some time off school to be at the hospital with her family every day. I'd just left my job of over 3 years to be a full-time writer, which meant I was working from home and could get a bus to meet her. We met for lunch most days for a month, always going to the cafe above Heels on Tottenham Court Road, and ordering the same thing each time, 2 Caesar salads and a plate of chips to share. She'd tell me how Floss was doing that day, but the news never seemed to get better. Everything was up in the air, and no one had any clear idea of what was going to happen next. The bone marrow transplant seemed like it was getting further and further away. I tried to calm her with the same repeated platitudes. She's in the best place she can be. She's in safe hands. The doctors know what they're doing. I knew she was being inundated with stats and science every day from experts, so I felt it was my job as an ignorant friend to be a positive cradle for her hope. But the truth was, I had no idea what was happening. Every day she asked me my news, desperate for some normality to distract and rejuvenate her before heading into the hospital room for the afternoon. I told her about the articles I was writing that week. I showed her boys on Tinder. She bought me a glass of Prosecco the day I found out I'd been given my first column, telling me she was just happy to celebrate something. At one point, it seemed like Floss was showing small signs of progress, and Farley said I should come to the hospital to visit her. I said I would love to, although I was nervous I wouldn't be able to keep it together. As I sanitised my hands before I went in, I realised I'd never visited anyone in hospital before. "Someone's come to see you," Farley said as I entered the room. Floss couldn't speak, but she smiled at me, and I was filled with relief and a rush of love for this girl, who was the closest thing I'd ever known to a little sister. I stood at the end of her bed and babbled at her, hoping it would provide some sort of distraction. I told her about the new series of girls that I knew she was going to love, about a new band I'd been listening to that I thought she'd like. Farley asked me to tell her about all the stuff I was writing, and she smiled again as I told her about the short film Lauren and I were working on, the script of which she'd have to edit for me sometime soon. After 15 minutes, I said goodbye to this spectacular, beautiful electric thunderstorm of a girl, knowing it could be the last time I ever saw her. I feel like I'm watching her slip away, Farley said to me one day soon after my visit during one of our lunches. I can feel it. I know it's happening. You don't know that, I said. People go to the darkest edge and come back to full health. You hear the stories all the time. But having seen Floss so ill, and being told that was her best day, I knew why Farley was having those thoughts, and it was important that I let her express them. The following week, early one afternoon, I was writing at my kitchen table when Farley called. "She's gone," she said, gasping for breath. "She died." I've never seen as many people gathered at a funeral as there were the day we said goodbye to Florence. All of our friends came to the service, along with masses of teachers and girls from her school, family, friends she met on her travels, people who'd been touched by her warmth and wit and intelligence and kindness over the years, of which there were hundreds. There were so many attendees, many of them had to stand outside the crematorium and watch the service from a screen. I smiled up at the sky when I realised this, hoping it would have made her happy, and hoping she knew just how loved she was. Freddie gave the eulogy. The rabbi, who'd known her since she was a kid, spoke admiringly of her charisma and courage. Her best friend did a reading of a breathtaking piece Florence had written for her yearbook page. "It may seem that life is difficult at times, but it's really as simple as breathing in and out," she read. "Rip open hearts with your fury and tear down egos with your modesty. Be the person you wish you could be, not the person you feel you are doomed to be. Let yourself run away with your feelings. You were made so that someone could love you. Let them love you." In between the funeral and the shiva, a period of mourning in the Jewish faith that happens at home, all the girls came back to our place. We went to Ivan's and picked up some wine. I made a huge pan of scrambled eggs while India produced endless rounds of toast. We talked about Florence, everything that was funny and brilliant and outrageous about her. We cried and we laughed, and we raised our glasses to her memory. The family house was just as packed for the shiva as it had been for the funeral. We all stood in the kitchen and the rabbi said prayers and spoke again of Florence. Farley began to read a poem, and I watched her speak the lines into the microphone, looking so much smaller than I'd ever seen her. She stopped at a particular line and began to cry, so she passed the poem to the rabbi, who continued to read it aloud. I looked across the crowded kitchen at this small bird-like creature, snapping into pieces, all her bones and words crumbling, and I wanted to barge through the room to hold her. It was the worst moment of my life. People stayed on late into the evening. Her school friends all sat in Florence's bedroom among her books and clothes. I'd been tasked with the condolences book. India, AJ and Lacey were chugging Bristol cream sherry that Auntie Laura had plied them with from plastic glasses. All of Farley's colleagues from the school where she taught had come to pay their respects, including the head teacher. Halfway through the evening, as is Jewish tradition, the grieving family sat on chairs in a line, and the mourners wished them a long life. I got to Farley and crouched down to her level to hug her. "I love you very much," I said, "and I wish you a very long and happy life." "Thank you," she said, squeezing me back. "Have you seen all the teachers from my school?" "Yes, they're lovely. I've just been talking to your deputy head." "Do you like her?" "I do. We had a great chat. What a nice woman." "I'm pleased you like her," she said, smiling. "What did you guys talk about?" "I asked her to look after you when you got back to work," I said. "I asked her to make sure someone's always looking after you." "I'll be okay, doll," she said, her huge brown eyes brimming with tears until one escaped through her lashes and ran down her cheek. "I just have to find a way to live without her." I spent the following days at the family home with Farley. There wasn't much talking, but I made tea and we helped her stepmum Annie with any bits that needed doing around the house. After Florence died, A Telegraph journalist found her blog and got in touch with the family to ask if they could run extracts of it in the paper, as well as an accompanying piece about her. They agreed, as they knew it's what she would have wanted, and the article meant even more people got in touch with Annie and Richard to express their sorrow at the loss of someone so full of life. "Send letters," Annie said one morning as she sat reading through a huge pile of cards and letters from people offering their condolences. "I used to always worry when I heard something bad had happened to someone that writing would be an intrusion. It's never an intrusion, it always helps. If there's one thing we can learn from this, it's to always just send the letter." That afternoon, we all took the dog for a walk. Farley and I walked side by side. We wore matching bobble hats that we'd bought a few days earlier when we'd gone to Kew Retail Park to pick up insoles for the shoes she wore to the funeral. What with the intense week of inseparable company, these matching hats and the adults behind us, it felt like we were teenagers again. Except this time we weren't talking about boys on MSN. Somewhere in our 15 years of walking side by side, from school to university lectures to the streets around our first place in London, we'd stopped playing at being grown-ups and accidentally become grown-ups. She told me once she never wanted to be forgotten. "I feel bad about resuming life as normal," she said. She said that before she knew she was dying, I reasoned. I know she would have hated the thought of you mourning her forever. I suppose. You can find a way of keeping her close to you and living with her without stopping your life. Everything will be so strange without her. "It will be a new normality," I said. "But she made fucking sure she won't be forgotten, don't worry." "Well, that's true," she said. You have to live. You don't have a choice. You move forward or you go under. We continued walking along the river. It was so cold and sunny, as still and clear as a day in an unshaken snow globe. We walked past a row of cottages in Chiswick with bright-coloured doors. Whitewashed pubs faced the cool, watery breeze. Other than the bridges with tube trains careering over, we could have been in a seaside village. "Ant and Dec live down here," she said, gesturing at the cottages. "In one of these ones." "No, they don't." "They do, I promise." "They don't. You're just saying that because the front doors are so small. I promise you they live here. Together. No, not together. They live next door to each other." We carried on walking. "I don't ever want to live far away from you," I said. "Me neither. I don't really care where I live when I'm older. I just want to live near you." "Me too. Even now it feels like we're too far away from each other. I want us to make sure our houses are really close. I want it to be a priority from now on." "So do I," she said. We continued down the riverside, the December sun still flooding the sky. "I always think of you when the weather's like this. This is your favourite kind of day," I said. "It is. Cold and bright. Yes. Whereas my favourite is dark and wet, because I'm a self-indulgent neurotic and you're always bouncy and buoyant." "Ha. You are. We got it wrong when we were kids. We always thought you were the sensitive one, but it turns out I'm the one that's always a mess. You're so much more resilient than you think you are." "I don't know about that," she said. "You are. You're made of the strongest stuff. I wouldn't cope if this were me." "You don't know that. You never know how you're going to react to something until it happens to you." We continued to pace alongside each other, watching the sunlight shimmy off the water. It's been like this every day since she died. "She's here," I said. "She's with us. She'll be here every time you call out an injustice or laugh at your favourite film. She will be there." We walked along Kew Bridge, Annie and her sister still in view behind us, the bruiser of a dog trotting beside them, tail merrily swishing from side to side. "Do you want to be cremated?" she asked. "I do," I said. "And I want to be scattered in Devon, on Mothercombe Beach." "Me too," she said. "But I want to be scattered where Floss will be, in Cornwall. Although I feel bad I won't be with you." "Oh, it's fine. We'll be together wherever we go next. We'll just have to meet each other there." "Definitely." "Do you think it's a bit lonery for me to be on a beach on my own? What about Hampstead Heath? It's my favourite place in London and my mum and dad used to take me there when I was a kid." No, definitely not. You'll be stamped on. Yeah, you're right. And too posh and predictable. That's why I think it's nice to be scattered in the sea, she said pensively. Although I'm scared of sharks. But you'll be dead already. Oh, yeah. That's the whole point. The shark could do its worst and you'd be fine. You're past the point of no return. OK, at sea then. We walked home in the beautiful light, and I felt grateful for Florence's life and everything she had taught me. I was grateful for the sun on Kew Bridge as I placed each foot in front of the other. I was grateful for understanding in that moment that life can really be as simple as just breathing in and out. And I was thankful to know what it was to love the person walking next to me as much as I did. So deeply, so furiously, so impossibly. Recipe: scrambled eggs. Serves 2. All you need is butter, eggs, and bread. No scrambled eggs need milk or cream. Keep it simple, and they're easy to both cook and eat when you're sad. 2 knobs of salted butter, 4 fresh eggs, plus 1 yolk if you're feeling indulgent, lightly beaten with a fork. Salt and black pepper to season. Melt 1 knob of butter slowly on a low heat in a wide saucepan. Pour eggs into the saucepan. Move them around with a wooden spoon, slowly and quite constantly. Take the pan off the heat when slightly too wet. Season and stir in the other knob of butter. Texts that my flatmate India has let me send off her phone, pretending to be her. I don't know why she agrees to it either. A text to Sam, her ex-colleague. India, 2047. Top of the morning to you, Sam. How's life? Bit of a random one, but I was wondering what borough of London you currently reside in. Sam, 2048. Richmond. Why do you ask? Are you moving south? India, 2050. Alas, no. Staying in Highgate. We're having some problems at the moment with our bin collection. They're only taking general refuse every other week, and we're filling them up quite rapidly. How would you feel about me bringing 2 of our bins down to Richmond every other week? I'll pick them up and bring them back the next day, so don't worry about that. Sam, 2051. What? You want to bring some bins 15 miles every other week? Why don't you just dump it somewhere? India, 2051. Because I like to know it's in safe hands. Sam, 2052. Bins? India, 2052. Yes. It won't be a big problem for you, you'll barely notice. Sam, 2053. Stop it. India, 2053. OK, no worries, I'll text my friend in Peckham. Sam, 2054. Can you only complete this job in places that are over 10 miles away? Seems quite drastic. Why don't you text a friend in Camden? Seems more suitable. India, 2056. It's about being in a different borough, Sam. North London is no good for me. I need a completely different borough in a completely different part of town. The following day. India, 2100. Hey, how you been doing? Sam, 2101. Oh my God. Is this about bins again? Been there, done that. India, 2101. Stop talking rubbish. Sam, 2102. Ha 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 ha. Good one. India, 2102. No, but seriously, are we good to start this arrangement next week? Sam, 2103. Oh my God, is this for real? India, 2103. My bins go on Tuesday, so I can pop them down on the overground train on Mun. Kiss kiss. Sam, 2105. I thought you'd been drinking, India. I live in Barnes. India, 2105. Bins? Sam, 2106. It's over an hour away. India, 2106. You're right. It's too long on the tube. Sam, 2107. It's not even on the tube. India, 2107. I'll bring them in a large cab. Sam, 2108. Stop this. I don't want your bins. India, 2109. OK. Bit lost with what to do now, but I guess you don't want the hassle. Sam, 2109. Why don't you just dump them somewhere? Unless you put personal documents in, no one's going to know. India, 2110. I suppose. I just wish I could bring them to Barnes as it's more practical. Sam, 2110. It's not. It's ludicrous. India, 2111. I get it if you want your privacy, etc., and don't want me coming back and forth. Sam, 2111. I don't want to be a bin creche, no, it's weird. But if you ever fancy a drink in Barnes, you're more than welcome. Just don't bring any bins. A text to Sean, an acquaintance from university. India, 1921. Hi. I get the impression that you have the nose for an entrepreneurial venture. Am I right? Sean, 1922. Who is this? India, 1922. India Masters, BA Hons. Sean, 1953. How can I help? India, 1954. I've identified a gap in the market, and it's a fairly big gap, to sell mini fridges in a variety of colours. I've got a business plan. All I need is a silent partner. Could that man be you? A text to Zach, a university friend. India, 1853. Can I ask you a favour? Zach, 1854. Sure, babe. India, 1854. Can I borrow a pair of your trousers for a work meeting this week? Zach, 1854. Haha, yeah. What sort of trousers? And why? India, 1855. Just noticed you wear nice ones and can't be bothered to buy new ones. And it's a really important meeting with a client. Zach, 1855. Mine will be too long. India, 1855. I don't think they will be. Zach, 1855. You are weird. Indy, how tall are you? India, 1856. I'm 5'2". Zach, 1857. I'm 5'11". India, 1857. I can roll them up. Don't worry about any of that, just meet me with the trousers. A text to Paul, a man India once snogged. India, 1902. Hi, how are you? Paul, 1916. Good, thanks. How are you? India, 1918. Great to hear from you. I have a request. I'm in the middle of starting a dance troupe, mainly traditional Irish dancing, but don't let that put you off. There will most certainly be a modern twist. Anyway, it can make you a lot of money come wedding season, and I wondered if you fancied a piece of the pie. It wouldn't take you long to learn the routines, and frankly, we need someone tall at the back. Let me know what you think. Paul, 1956. Hi. Wow, thanks so much for thinking of me. As fun as that does sound, unfortunately my calendar for this year is looking pretty busy, and I don't think I'd be able to commit to this. Really sorry about that. Be sure to take pictures. Take care and hopefully see you soon. Kiss. India, 1958. But do you want a piece of the pie, though? Hello, any woman Emily has known. 23rd of March. Hello, any woman Emily has known for the last 28 years. I hope you're well and excited about next weekend's festivities. We thought it would be useful for all of you ladies to know what the shape of the day looks like. Saturday will begin promptly at 8 a.m. Please join us in the Tower of London for a Tudor cooking course. We will be making stuffed roasted venison with stewed pears. This will be breakfast at 9 a.m, along with a generous pint of mead. At 10, we will make our way up north to Kentish Town Sports Centre, where we will be playing a game of dildo football. It's very simple. We split into 2 teams and play a friendly game, but all while wearing big black strap-ons. Please, if you haven't already, send us a sentence of your favourite memory of you and Emily. We will write these in Tipp-Ex on her strap-on so she can keep it forever. At 12 p.m, sharp, we will change into our first fancy dress outfits. Disco meets Keenan and Kel. Leave the sports centre and make our way to Emily's favourite pub she went to twice 10 years ago, the Sparrow and Ape in Camden. 12:30 p.m. Lunch, included in the money you've already transferred, will be a delicious meze sharing platter, entitling you to 1 falafel, 3 olives and half a flatbread each, and a glass of Prosecco. If you don't drink Prosecco or any type of fizzy wine, you're advised to organise your own alcohol for the entire day. 2 p.m. After lunch, we thought it would be fun to play a game of How Close Are We Actually? We will form a circle and Emily will go round and have to answer questions about us. If she gets more than one wrong, you'll be evicted from the hen do and be asked to make your way home. E.g., for the first round, she'll be asked what our jobs are. In the second round, she'll be asked what our middle names are, etc. Not only do we think this will raise the stakes of the day, we need to get the group down from 35 to 30 for the dinner venue later, as 30 is its capacity. This seems like the only fair option. 3 p.m. We are super excited to have had chocolate moulds made of a variety of male anuses by artisan chocolate company Sucre et Crème. Massive thanks to bridesmaid Linda for organising this. It will be Emily's job to guess which anus belongs to her fiancé. 4 p.m. We think this would be a good time to change into our second fancy dress outfit, my favourite Emily. I've had a lot of concerned emails over the last few weeks from people about what they should come as, and honestly, we can't stress this enough, this is meant to be fun. So don't worry too much about it. Lacrosse Emily, Gap Year Emily, and Unemployed Fat Emily all work great. Someone mentioned the Priory Emily, and this is the only idea we're not sure about. Bear in mind we've got mums and grannies there for this portion of the day. 5 p.m. Before everyone gets too tipsy to remember anything, we want to present Emily with her tampon tree. I hope you all got the email about saving a used tampon and bringing it in an envelope. We'll have a fig tree to present to Emily, decorated with all our tampons, to symbolise how we will always be connected by womanhood and friendship. We think it will be a really special moment for her. 6 p.m. We say goodbye to the grannies and the mums and order them an Uber. 6:30 p.m. We head to Ribs and Bibs in Stockwell. 7:15 p.m. Arrive at restaurants and immediately change into our going out clothes. Heels, please. Want to make it as glam as possible for Emily. 7:30 p.m. Starters. 8:30 p.m. Surprise performance by a nude cast of the Blue Man Group. Emily was very keen to impress that she didn't want an embarrassing stripper, so we thought this was a good compromise. NB, bridesmaids, remember to bring a change of clothes for Emily because she will be covered in paint by the end of this. 9 p.m, main courses. 10 p.m, pudding and a DIY millinery crash course. We have world-famous hatter Madame Meringue arriving, who has agreed to teach us all how to make disposable fascinators from our leftover pudding. You can watch her amazing banoffee pie beret tutorials here for a sense of what we're in for. 11 p.m. Walk to Fluid Club in Vauxhall, where we have reserved a chair. No tables left. 4 a.m. Club closes, and that's that. All that's left to say is, Emily wanted us to let you all know that unfortunately, an invitation to the hen do does not guarantee an invitation to the wedding. It's going to be a small-ish affair, and they can't accommodate everyone, but she still hopes you'll be there to celebrate her last days as an unmarried gal. Anyone found talking to Emily about the wedding or angling for an invitation will be immediately removed from the hen do. This is meant to be a fun day for her, not another day of logistical wedmin. Thank you everyone for transferring £378.23. This covers the entire cost of the day, other than transport, main courses at the restaurant, drinks at the restaurant, and drinks at the club. We're yet to receive money from the following girls: Emily Baker, Jennifer Thomas, Sarah Carmichael, Charlotte Foster. If those girls don't transfer the money by 11 p.m. tonight, they unfortunately won't be able to attend, and everyone will have to cover the cost of their places. Let's get ready to roost! The Bridesmaids. Kiss, kiss, kiss. My therapist says, "Why are you here?" Why was I there? I never thought I would be there. In a small room with cream carpets and a burgundy sofa just behind Oxford Circus, where it always smelt of molecule perfume and nothing else, no matter how hard I sniffed when I came in. No leftover lunch, no cooling coffee, no evidence of life outside this room other than this woman's perfume. The smell that would forever make my heart sink and think of 1 p.m. on a Friday afternoon whenever I got a whiff of it on a woman at a party. I was there for a price by the hour, in a vacuum of life where nothing existed but conversation between two people. A commentator's box, the TV studio of post-match analysis. The less popular discussion show that runs alongside the big thing. This was strictly It Takes Two. This was Dancing on Ice defrosted. This was the room I would always think of when I was on the verge of making a bad decision, in the loo of a pub, with a man in the back of a taxi. This room that promised that my life would change in it. I always promised myself I would never be in a room like this, but I didn't know where to be but there. I had run clean out of other options. I was 27, and I felt like I was toppling from a gale of anxiety. It was 9 months since I went freelance, and I'd spent nearly every day alone with my thoughts. I'd pushed away the concerns of my friends and family. I was always on the verge of tears, but I was unable to talk to anyone. I woke up every morning with no idea of where I was or what was happening. I came round to my life every morning like the previous night's sleep was a punch in the head that left me bloody. I was there because I had to be there. I was there because I had put off being there. Because I always said I didn't have any money or time, because it was indulgent and silly. I told a friend that I felt on the verge of an implosion, and she gave me a woman's number to call. I had run out of excuses. "I think I'm going to fall and die," I replied. She, Eleanor, peered over her glasses and then back to her page, furiously writing notes. She had a dark, semi-parted, 70s-style, flicky fringe, brown feline eyes and a strong nose. She must have been in her early 40s. She looked like a young Lauren Hutton. I noted that her arms were muscular and tanned and elegant. I thought that she probably thought I was a silly crybaby, a big fat loser, an overprivileged girl needlessly spaffing all her hard-earned cash so she could blabber on about herself for an hour a week. She probably saw women like me coming a mile off. "I can't open or close any windows in my flat. I have to ask someone else to do it," I continued, clipped and quiet to hold in tears that felt like they were pressing up behind the back wall of my eyeballs like water to a flood barrier. "Sometimes I can't go into a room at all if a window's open because I'm scared of falling out of it, and I have to stand with my back pressed against the wall when a train pulls into a tube station from the tunnel. I see myself falling in front of it and dying. I see it happening every time I blink, then I'll spend all night replaying it over and over again in my head and I can't sleep." "Right," she replied in an Australian accent. "And how long have you felt like this?" "It's all got really bad in the last 6 months," I said. "But on and off for the best part of 10 years. The drinking gets bad when I'm very anxious. Same with the death obsession. The flavour of the month fixation is falling." I guided her through the greatest hits of my recurring emotional turmoil. I talked about my weight that had been as ever-changing as cloud formations, the fact that I could look at every photo taken of me since 2009 and tell her exactly to the pound how much I weighed in each one. I told her about my obsession with alcohol that hadn't waned since I was a teenager, my unquenchable thirst when most people my age now knew when to stop, how I'd always been known for knocking it back at record speed, the vast black holes in my memory from these nights over the years, my increasing shame and distress over these lost hours, and that unrecognisable mad woman running around town who I was meant to be responsible for, but who I had no recollection of being or knowing. I told her about my inability to commit to a relationship, my obsession with male attention, and my simultaneous fear of getting too close to someone. How difficult I had found watching all my friends, one by one, ease into long-term partnerships like they were lowering themselves into a cool swimming pool on a scorching day. How every boyfriend I'd had has asked why I can't do the same. How I'd always feared that I was romantically wired wrong. We talked about how I spread myself like the last teaspoon of Marmite across the width of as many lives as possible. I told her that I gave almost all of my energy away to other people when no one had asked it of me. I described the control I thought this gave me over what other people thought of me, and yet it left me feeling more and more like a fraud. I told her how I fantasized about what people said about me behind my back, how I would probably agree with almost any insult thrown at me anyway. I told her the lengths I'd gone to for approval, spending all my money on rounds of drinks for people I'd never met and not being able to pay my rent the next week, starting Saturday nights at 4 p.m. and ending them at 4 a.m. to attend 6 different birthday parties of people I barely knew. How tired and heavy and spineless and self-loathing this had made me feel. The pathetic irony that I had the greatest circle of friends around me, and yet I felt I couldn't tell them any of this. How deep-rooted my fear of dependency was. That I could cry in the bed of a stranger I met in New York, but I couldn't ask my best friends for help. But none of this is having a visible effect on my life, I said. I feel silly for coming here because it all could be so much worse. I have great friends, a great family, my work is going well. No one would know that anything is wrong with me from the outside. I just feel shit all the time. If you feel shit all the time, she said, it's having a very, very big effect on your life. I guess. You feel like you're going to fall because you're broken into 100 different floating pieces, she told me. You're all over the place. You've got no rooting. You don't know how to be with yourself. The back wall of my eyeballs finally gave way and tears poured out from the deepest well in the pit of my stomach. I feel like nothing is holding me together anymore, I told her, my breathlessness punctuating my sentence like hiccups, the stream of my tears on my cheeks as hot and free-flowing as blood. Of course you do, she said with a new softness. You've got no sense of self. So that's why I was there. The penny dropped. I thought I had a fear of falling, but really, I just didn't know who I was. And the stuff I used to fill up that empty space no longer worked. It just made me feel even more removed from myself. This overwhelming anxiety had been in the post for a while, and it had finally arrived, fluttered through the letterbox and landed at my feet. I was surprised by this diagnosis. There I was thinking my sense of self was rock solid. I am Generation Sense of Self. This is what we do. We have been filling in About Me sections since 2006. I thought I was the most sensiest of selfiest of anyone I knew. You will never know what I truly think of you, she said just as I was about to leave, letting me know she had already sensed how I work. You might be able to guess from my demeanour if I like you, but you'll never know exactly what I think of you on a personal level. You need to let go of that thought if we're going to make any progress. At first, I was filled with an uncomfortable paranoia, then an almost immediate sense of total relief. She was telling me to stop making crap jokes. She was telling me to stop saying sorry for ploughing through her Kleenex supply on the table next to me. She was telling me that this was a room where I didn't have to labour over every word and gesture and anecdote to accommodate her in the hope that she would like me. This woman, with no sense of self, no self-regard, no self-esteem, a shape-shifting, people-pleasing presence, a tangled knot of anxiety, was being given permission to just be. She was telling me I was safe to let go in this room with the cream carpet and the burgundy sofa just behind Oxford Circus. I left her office and walked the 5.5 miles home. I was both liberated with the relief that I had finally found my way to that room and unbearably heavy with the weight of what was to come. I told myself that everything could be ironed out in 3 months. She thinks I've got no sense of self, I told India as she made our dinner that night. That's bullshit, she replied indignantly. You've got a stronger sense of self than anyone I know. Yeah, but not that kind of sense of self, I said. Not like how I'll vote in the EU referendum or what my favourite way of serving potato is. She means I break myself off into different bits to give to different people, rather than being whole. I'm so restless and unsettled. I don't know how to be without all the things I used to prop me up. I didn't know you felt like this. I feel like I'm falling apart, I told her. I don't want you to be sad, India said, holding me barefoot in our kitchen, with the gentle bubbling sound of spaghetti boiling on the stove. I don't want you to do this if it's going to make you sad. The following Friday, I told Eleanor that India said she didn't want me to go through this process because she was worried it would make me sad. I told her that I half agreed. Okay, well, newsflash, she barked in her reassuringly plain-speaking, sarcastic tone that I would come to crave as the year went on. You're already sad. You're really fucking sad. I know, I replied, reaching for the Kleenex again. Sorry for using all these. I bet you really get through a lot in your line of work. She assured me that that was what they were there for. And so, the process began. Every week I went in, and we did detective work on myself to answer the question of how I came to be who I was in 27 years. We did a forensic search of my past, sometimes discussing a thing that happened the night before, sometimes a thing that happened at school in a PE lesson 20 years ago. Therapy is a great big archaeological dig on your psyche until you hit something. It's a personal weekly episode of Time Team, a joint effort of expert and presenter. The therapist, Mick Aston, the patient, Tony Robinson. We talked and we talked until she posed a cause and effect theory that fitted. Then, crucially, we worked out how to change it. Sometimes she set me tasks, things to try, stuff to work on, questions to answer, thoughts to mull over, conversations I had to have. For 2 months, I cried every Friday afternoon. Every Friday night, I slept for 10 hours. The big myth of therapy is that it's all about pointing the blame at other people. But as the weeks passed, I found the opposite to be true. I heard about some people's therapists who took on a sort of defensive, deluded mum role in their patients' lives, always reassuring them that it was not their fault, but the fault of the boyfriend or the boss or the best friend. Eleanor rarely let me pass the accountability onto someone else, and always forced me to question what I had done to end up in a particularly bad situation, which is why I always dreaded our sessions. Unless someone dies, she told me one Friday, if something bad happens in a relationship, you have played a part in it. A couple of months in, and me and Eleanor properly laughed together for the first time. I came in, a mess after a bad work week. I was low on money and self-esteem, and I was worried about paying my rent, and I was worried my career was going nowhere. My paranoia was spinning out of control. I had imagined that anyone I had ever worked for thought I was incompetent, untalented, and useless. I didn't leave the flat for 3 days. I described a vivid fantasy to her in which a boardroom of people who I didn't know talked about what a terrible, incapable writer I was. She stared at me while I talked, then her face contorted in disbelief. I mean, she breathed out and raised her eyebrows. I think it's insane that you think that. I noticed that she got more broadly, brashly Australian the tougher she was being. I looked up from my tissue, not the reaction I was hoping for. Whole boardrooms of people you've never met? She said, shaking her head in disbelief. That's incredibly narcissistic. Well, I said, managing to snort with laughter. Yeah, when you put it like that, it's ridiculous. No one is talking about you. Yeah, I said, patting my tears with the tissue, suddenly feeling like a character Woody Allen would play. You're right. Seriously, she said, still flabbergasted, flicking her fringe away from her high cheekbones. "You're not all that interesting, Dolly." When I got into my 3rd month, I had my first tear-free session. The box of Kleenex went untouched, a therapy milestone. While my closest friends were encouraging of the process, soon it became apparent that self-examination made me boring to the wrong people. I started to drink less and less, always questioning whether I was doing it to have fun or doing it to distract myself from a problem. I tried to put a stop to people-pleasing, aware that giving my time and energy away so freely was what was chipping away at the void that I didn't want to turn into a quarry. I was more honest. I told people when I was upset or offended or angry, and valued the sense of calm that came with integrity, paid with the small price of an uncomfortable conversation. I became more self-aware, so inevitably I made a tit of myself for the amusement of other people far less. I felt like I was growing week by week. I felt my insides photosynthesize with every day I put new habits into practice. I developed an indoor plant obsession, a sort of verdant, pathetic fallacy. I read up on what I should put in every corner of light and shade, and I filled my flat with an abundance of green. Pothos plants crawled down bookshelves. A Boston fern sat on top of my fridge. A Swiss cheese plant fanned against my bright white bedroom wall. I hung a perfect philodendron above my bed, and at night the odd cold droplet of water fell off the heart-shaped point of its leaves and onto my head. India and Belle questioned how healthy this was for me, comparing it to Chinese water torture. But I'd read that it was guttation, a process where a plant sheds unnecessary water at night. It works hard to get rid of everything putting pressure on its roots. And I told them that meant something to me. Me and the philodendron were doing a thing together. "Any more plants in here?" Farley said one day, looking around my bedroom. "And it's going to turn into a little shop of horrors." When I didn't drink as much, I experienced the brand new sensation of waking up with a linear recollection of the night. The things people said, the way they looked, the signals between each other that they thought were discreet. I noticed that whenever I turned up to a social event, people wanted the bad stuff. If it was at the pub table, they wanted another bottle of wine, they wanted to call a drug dealer, they wanted to sit outside and chain smoke, they wanted to drunkenly trade nasty gossip about someone we knew. Without realising, I'd become a black market tradesman on a night out. I was everyone's green light for bad behaviour, and I hadn't realised until I stopped. Eleanor's most brutal and brilliant takedown was delivered when we were talking about this one Friday afternoon. "People want me to gossip, I've realised," I told her. "It's the thing they expect of me when I arrive somewhere, particularly if they're getting wrecked." "And did you gossip?" "A bit, yeah," I said. "I didn't realise how much I used to do it." "Why did you do it?" "I don't know. To feel close to people? To make conversation? Maybe to feel powerful," I said. "That's the only reason people gossip. I obviously did it to feel powerful." "Yes, you did," she said, with the slight smile she reserved for when she was pleased I'd got there before she did. "It's putting other people down so you could feel big." "Yes, I suppose it is." "Do you know who else does that?" There was a pause. "Donald Trump." I burst out laughing. "Eleanor, I've come to really appreciate your brand of tough love," I told her. "But even for you, that's a bit of a stretch." "Fine, Nigel Farage then," she said, shrugging slightly, as if I was being pedantic. "My therapist compared me to Donald Trump today," I texted Farley as I walked out onto Regent Street. "I think I'm making real progress." Then around 5 months into therapy, I suddenly felt like we'd hit a brick wall. My development plateaued. I found myself being defensive with her. She told me I was being defensive with her. In one session, I proposed that perhaps there was no answer to be found in dissecting the events and decisions of my life, in going over and over the thing that happened with that boyfriend once, or the thing that my parents did or didn't say when I was growing up. That perhaps it was a futile exercise, that perhaps I was just born this way. Did she think there was a chance I was just born this way? She looked at me blankly. "No, I don't," she replied. "Well, obviously you don't," I said in a surly fashion. because otherwise there would be literally no need for your job. If I fucked up that week, I sometimes worked